Good afternoon, everybody. While they're leaving, can we please thank our wonderful musicians from the UNSW Orchestra, Hikaru and Anastasia. Thank you very much, that was beautiful. Good afternoon, I'm Professor Emma Johnston, Dean of Science here at UNSW, and honoured to be the host of this very special event today, a memorial to our dear Katharina Gaus. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which the university is built, the Bejigal people. I pay tribute to their elders past and present, but also acknowledge their deep and continuing connections to country. I'd also like to pay my respects to traditional owners on the lands of which our online audience join us, and welcome to our online audience from wherever you are across Australia and indeed across the globe. To Kat's friends, family, colleagues, welcome everybody. Special thank you to our remarkable Scientia Professor Justin Gooding down here on the front for allowing me to host this event today, and for sharing this opportunity with friends, family and colleagues and the wider UNSW community to celebrate and acknowledge Katharina's life, her achievements here at UNSW and around the globe. Scientia Professor Katharina Gaus, or Kat as she was affectionately known, was an esteemed member of the UNSW community, an accomplished immunologist and molecular microscopist, and she would say physicist as well. Kat was widely recognised for her contributions to the scientific research and to medical research, going on to receive many awards, many accolades. However, it was the moments that she spent building her research team and supporting them to achieve their absolute best that I feel Kat felt most proud of. Seeing the group leaders at Single Molecule Science thrive, the BMIF becoming what it is, seeing her husband receive the Eureka Prize for Science, just being an inspiration to her students was, in my understanding, Kat's reason for living, and it was the sparkling light in her eyes that I'm sure many of you will recall. And in fact, we received a special message from Kat's very first PhD student, Astrid Marknau, that I'd like to read out now. Kat was an unstoppable force of nature. She was fiercely intelligent, complex, had a big heart, and so much passion for everything that she took an interest in. When I first met her, her warm smile and excitement for science drew me in immediately. There was no question in my heart that it was the right thing to do to move from one continent to the other, to be her first PhD student. I ended up staying with her for over 7 years. It's hard to put all these memories in a few words, but what stood out was that she strongly believed in her vision and in her people. She was tough. She pushed herself and everyone she worked with to their limits. This was solely because she wanted us to succeed and do the best science we could. It was completely natural when it came to guiding and mentoring with Kat. Her spirit and her drive that led her to be an outstanding scientist and human being is her legacy, which will continue to live on in the many lives that she has touched. Thank you, Astrid, for those lovely words. Those words are a clear testament to the impact that Kat had on the people that she was working with and those she mentored, but to really that impact extended to everyone that she worked closely with, including myself. And I personally will never forget her resolve, absolute resolve. Kat and I had many wonderful conversations about her science and her understanding of what made great science. She would tell me about the brand new microscopes that were being built and how they would see things that had never ever been seen before. She'd also patiently explain to me what she needed to be able to achieve that ambitious vision for her science and for her team, which was really deeply and thoroughly thought out and well planned. She was as much excited by discovery science as by what those discoveries could mean for industry, for government, for medical treatments, for jobs. And I only wish she'd been around a bit longer before the cancer hit her. Time for her to spend studying that particular disaster. And I bet she would have made some steps towards a cure. But time was something that Kat wasn't given. Time was something that we have been given. Time to remember Kat and to put everything we learnt from her to good work. Put everything we learnt from her into action so that we can mark her legacy. And I'd like to end just my few words this evening or this afternoon with a poem that I think reflects how Kat would like us to remember her after the shock and the pain. I think she smiles at us and she wishes us well. At least I hope that's how you remember Kat. So with your permission, I'll read a poem. It's called Remember by Christina Rossetti. Remember me when I'm gone away, gone far into the silent land, when you can no longer hold me by the hand, nor I half turn to go, yet turning stay. Remember me when no more day by day you tell me of the future that you planned. Only remember me, you understand. It'll be late to counsel then or pray, yet if you should forget me for a while, and afterwards remember, do not grieve. For if the darkness, corruption leave, a vestige of the thoughts that once I had, better by far you should forget and smile than that you should remember and be sad. So thank you for joining us in remembering Katharina. And I'd now like to introduce Professor Vlado Perkovic, Dean of Medicine and Health at UNSW, to speak. Thanks, Vlado.
Thanks very much, Emma, and Justin, Kat's family, colleagues, friends. I'm going to speak a little bit today about some key aspects of Professor Katharina Gaus's academic career as they illuminate things about her and her legacy. I'd actually heard about Kat and her achievements long before I joined UNSW, but terribly only got to know her personally for what turned out to be a short time. Kat studied physics and mathematics at the University of Heidelberg in Germany, but most people don't know that she never graduated from that degree. During her course, she undertook a summer scholarship at the University of Cambridge in the UK, where she was talked into not returning. This really, I think, highlights the first point I'd like to make about Kat. She had an incredible intellect and a massive capability, and this was obvious to everybody. Instead, the people at the University of Cambridge were so impressed and enamoured with Kat that she was enrolled directly into a Masters of Philosophy and then a PhD, which was awarded in 1999. She was supported by the German National Scholarship Foundation that supports the top 1% of German students. Again, obvious and exceptional capacity, and what former Dean of Medicine Peter Smith describes as an intellectual quality and personality that were quite extraordinary. After her time in Cambridge, Kat came here to Sydney in 1999 to work at the Heart Research Institute. She was soon awarded an ARC postdoctoral fellowship and indeed had external funding for her salary for her entire career. In 2005, she established her own research group, at that time the Membrane Cell Biology Group, here at the University of New South Wales, supported by an NHMRC and Heart Foundation co-funded Career Development Award and an ARC Research Fellowship. She led the creation of what became the Biomedical Imaging Facility, something that remains a key strength of this university to this day, and soon formed the Single Molecule Science Group. Responding to a call for big vision ideas across UNSW, Kat had the idea of taking microscopy to the next stage, asking whether you can understand medicine when looking at individual molecules, and whether you can then use that to understand both health and disease. Of over 20 ideas put forward, hers was one of only 2 selected, and subsequently this positioned UNSW right at the cutting edge of the rapidly exploding area of microscopy. It made UNSW internationally recognised and superior in capacity to most places in the world. Kat was always able to think beyond her own research and build for a bigger scale. She could bring together young scientists, and in the first initiative of its type here in Sydney, asked whether a deal could be done with the European Molecular Biology Labs, or EMBL, to co-label her group, and of course they had no choice but to agree. Peter Gunning, who's here with us today and who was former head of the School of Medical Sciences, describes routine plotting meetings with Kat focused on ways to find microscopy, and describes a capacity to find every nook and cranny that might contain a few dollars. And Kat was extraordinary in not just finding those dollars, but really achieving great things with them. Her work during this time, microscopes worked using her physics background, but also combining that with an ability to ask the right biological questions. This highlights additional things about Kat that I think are critical. Her ability to see over the horizon and well beyond what most others could see. Her ability to bring others along on her journey and turn the vision that she had into reality and major success, and create insights that would drive new thinking and advances. To quote Professor Merlin Crossley, our own Deputy Vice-Chancellor academic, she knew exactly what she wanted and she delivered. She was cheerfully forthright and wasn't going to accept no for an answer. From 2005, Kat received numerous awards and accolades as her star ascended rapidly. Some of these include ARC Early Researcher Awards, a New South Wales Young Tall Poppy Award, an Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship, an NHMR Senior Research Fellowship, a Young Investigator Award from the Australian New Zealand Society for Cell and Development Biology, the New South Wales Science and Engineering Award for Excellence, what's now become the New South Wales Premier's Prize for Science and Engineering, the Gottschalk Medal from the Australian Academy of Science, an Elizabeth Blackburn Fellowship and NHMRC Achievement Award as the top-ranked fellowship for a woman in her field, and the Khwarizmi International Award. But her contributions weren't just in scholarly research. She was active in the broader community, particularly encouraging schoolgirls to become scientists through outreach programs. She was passionate about showing them how exciting immunology could be and inspiring the next generation of female scientists by describing her work in terms of perhaps left field things like the 1980s computer game Pac-Man. She remained active and committed despite a major illness and difficult treatment. Just last year, she reported a new super-resolution microscope that decreased the resolution of them from 20 nanometres to 2 nanometres. Suddenly we can image individual protein-protein interactions or protein conformation with a light microscope in live cells. It was recently listed as one of the 20 best inventions of 2020, continuing to innovate to the end. Over the last year or two, I had many opportunities to speak to Kat, but she never wanted to talk about her research. She brushed off any questions about her personal situation and didn't want to discuss how she was feeling. All she wanted to talk about was the researchers who were part of a single molecule science group and the things that she wanted to do to support and further develop them. And this brings me to the last point I'd like to highlight about Kat. Everybody who I've spoken to about her describes a single-minded obsession with growing and developing the next generation of researchers. And while we've lost a lot in so many dimensions with her passing, this is something that will persist. The myriad of people who've grown and developed under her guidance are a lasting and permanent legacy, and she'll live on through their activity and their discoveries, and will all undoubtedly continue to benefit from her work long into the future. I'd now like to virtually introduce Ludger Johannes and Jamie Rossjohn, two close colleagues of Kat who've recorded a very special message for us to share with you all today. Ludger is a research director at INSERM at Institut Curie in Paris, France, and Jamie Rossjohn is a professor of biochemistry and molecular biology at Monash University in Melbourne and a current ARC Australian Laureate Fellow. Please enjoy this special tribute video.
Hello, Kat. So you've moved away. I've cried over your loss more than once. You were such a great person. You were so efficient, so smart, and so pleasant to work with. Your experiments showed that a certain class of proteins that get into cells in an unconventional manner in interaction with glycosylated lipids do so by reorganizing these lipids in a defined manner. 10 years and a series of papers later in Nature Cell Biology, it was more than clear that we had hit a gold mine with our collaboration. At UNSW, you had in the meantime created the Single Molecule Science Initiative and the European Molecular Biology Laboratory Node in Australia. I think to have understood that you were a tough cookie when it came to negotiate with the university officials. The people from within Single Molecule Science told me that you would always get what you asked for. You were obviously growing into leadership status with the ambition to shape science at UNSW and beyond. But you were also a great mentor. At UNSW, you have mentored several young researchers who then moved away to start their own teams elsewhere in Australia or abroad. We will all miss you, Kat. Thanks so much for what you have shared with us. So long, Kat. So long.
My name is Jamie Rossjohn. I am an Australian Research Council Laureate Fellow, and I'm also a sub-3 hour marathon runner. And I've said that because Kat, I know, would have found that rather amusing, as she used to say that relative to opportunity and career stage is one of my most significant achievements to date. Kat was a scientist. She was driven by the science. She made, amongst many salient finds, key pieces of work in the area of T-cell activation, how T-cells get activated. What, in my view, set Kat apart from many other scientists was that to answer her scientific questions in the area of T-cell signaling, she had to build her own microscopes, develop her own tools, her own software, her own reagents to answer these fundamental questions surrounding T-cell immunity. And because of that, she was very much highly regarded at the national and international level over a long period of time. And in fact, today actually represents a poignant day in which our collaborative paper with Kat Gaus and the laboratory of Nicole Gruter has just been published in Science, which I'll depict here. Kat was a key contributor to this story, which helped resolve a 25-year-old conundrum about T-cell docking geometry and how that relates to T-cell signaling. In addition to Kat being a super scientist, we also know that Kat was a sprinter. And I used to joke with Kat on numerous occasions that sprinters led a charmed life in comparison to that of endurance runners. Like with most sprinting races, the race is over before you know it. And unfortunately, Kat's life was cut far too short. But the race that Kat ran was true, it was purposeful, it had meaning and spirit, and ultimately it was extremely brave. And she shall be sorely missed.
Thank you to Vlado, and thank you to Lutka and Johannes. We have a beautiful message there from her colleagues and collaborators, and a great summary of the incredible achievements she made throughout her career from Professor Perkovic. So thank you both. I would now like to introduce Associate Professor Till Böking. Till is from the School of Medical Sciences at UNSW. He's leader of the Molecular Machines Group in EMBL Australian Node for Single Molecule Science. Welcome, Till.
Many who have met Kat remember her big smile and big cheery hello, her curiosity and sharp intellect. I first worked with Kat when she started out at UNSW and was struck by her enthusiasm and her ingenuity as she built her first prototype microscope. Years later, I was able to start my own group after a postdoc in Boston, thanks to Kat's encouragement to apply for fellowships and grants and for her detailed feedback and advice, plus the requisite luck, of course. But without Kat, I would have stood no chance of getting grants so early on. In 2015, Kat founded the EMBL Australian Node in Single Molecule Science with a vision to understanding how single molecules orchestrate cellular processes. SMS provided the framework for Kat to give young group leaders the resources, the time, and the intellectual environment to reach their full potential. Under her guidance, SMS grew to 12 research groups with over 20 PhD student completions and over 150 papers in 5 years. Kat strongly believed that with great privilege came great responsibility. For her, this meant building an inclusive research culture. In her words, "I believe the people are key to our rich and dynamic research environment. The types of people and how they work together and support each other are what shape the culture of any center. Culture is easy to destroy, but it's much, much harder to build." With the help of workplace coach Rachel Brady, Kat put full thought into building an ideal workplace where people can thrive, with initiatives including yearly retreats, careers workshops, outreach events, and giving group leaders a voice in decision-making on core issues. I'd say that last one is pretty rare for an academic department. These efforts are a lasting legacy as we continue to build on this culture. Kat was a lot of fun. She just embraced every aspect of life with the same gusto and welcomed people around her to be part of it. She shared stories with the enthusiasm of a great schooler. These words from Sue Liu remind me of Kat's vivid stories of her travels with Justin to places like the Galapagos Islands or Antarctica. Storytelling was also part of her mentorship. Or as Emma Sirecki puts it, as you got to know her, she revealed an unexpected candor and even fragility, freely sharing her mistakes, struggles, and limitations. Many group leaders joined SMS because they wanted to work with Kat. There was something exciting and genuine about her that attracted diverse people. Kat had a keen eye for identifying the right fit for what she sometimes called the collection of misfits. The cohesion within SMS is a lasting testament to this. Kat was strongly committed to enabling her people. David Jakes likens her commitment to having your own champion. Her unwavering belief in our ability as scientists gave us the confidence to back our own ideas, and she was always very excited to share in our discoveries. Kat was an inspiration. I was amazed at her energy when listening to her updates on recent developments during our lunchtime catch-ups. She was fiercely independent and had an iron will to achieve what she believed was right. As Leo observes, Kat pushed against barriers that held people back. She did this usually with little reservation. She frequently pushed back against the establishment, challenging them to do better. In science, Kat also pushed the boundaries, and she was the first in the world to apply emerging super-resolution imaging to fundamental biological questions. As Liz Hine puts it, Kat was a formidable mentor who had a go-big philosophy that inspired me and those around her to aim high. I wish I had a department chair who regularly goes to coffee with me. These are the words of a visitor from the University of Utah after spending some time in SMS. Indeed, Kat was extremely generous with her time to discuss our research or to just catch up for lunch or coffee. She also enjoyed involving people in one of her many sports, and I fondly remember our running, walking, or climbing sessions. Kat's mentorship was tailored. I particularly remember my science deep dive with her. She convened a panel of hand-picked colleagues to help me prioritize my broader research plans and provide tips on how to raise funding and overcome bottlenecks. This session gave me much-needed guidance at a precarious stage of my career. Importantly, Kat's mentorship gave people the freedom to develop their own identity. Or as Jessie Goyette puts it, the way in which she provided support firmly reflected how much she valued diversity. Where so many just talked the talk, Kat truly walked the walk. Rather than mold junior researchers into her own image, she would give them space and support to grow into the researcher they wanted to be. Fittingly, many of Kat's former mentees now lead their own teams. Dylan Owen, King's College London. Jeremy Rossi, University of Constance. Rusty Nikovic, Director of Technology Development at a biotech company. Liz Hind, ASC Future Fellow at the University of Melbourne. Senthil Arumugam, EMBL Australia Group Leader at Monash University. Jessie Goyette, who had been co-leading a joint team with Kat at SMS. I hope that my reflections on Kat's friendship, mentorship, and her unwavering support have given you a glimpse of how much she cared about all of us. Kat's spirit lives on in SMS, and we're committed to keep advancing her vision. Kat, thank you for everything you've taught us, and simply for being an awesome friend. I want to finish with the following words from Scientific Director of EMBL Australia, James Wistock. I am sorry that I am unable to present in person because of these travel restrictions. Kat was a wonderful friend, colleague, and scientist. Her stellar vision around single molecule science was absolutely central to building EMBL Australia and in establishing the Centre of Excellence for Advanced Molecular Imaging. Kat was also extremely supportive and generous to me personally, and she always had time to frankly and fearlessly discuss a problem or a particular challenge, all the time retaining her sparky sense of humour. Kat also opened my eyes scientifically to something that was obvious to her, that it is only through combining single molecule imaging and structural biology that we would make progress towards the holy grail of biomedical research. Namely, what does a cell actually look like at atomic resolution? Kat achieved so much. She was an inspirational scientist, and we all miss her so much. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Till. So we're reaching a halfway point in the memorial service, and we wanted to give you a little gift, and the gift is a couple of moments, a couple of minutes perhaps, for each of us to reflect on our own personal relationship with Kat, the impact it has, to think about Kat, her life and her legacy. So please take a couple of moments of silence, and while you do that, there'll be some images of Kat on the screen. Well, I don't know about you, but that's left me feeling a lot stronger and more ambitious, more excited, more empathetic, all the things that Kat represents. I hope you got something out of that moment of reflection. And now I'd like to invite the wonderful Professor Justin Gooding, Scientia Professor Justin Gooding, up to say a few words. Thanks, Justin.
So please excuse the very croaky voice. I am COVID negative, but I do have the flu. It's not true, there is flu in Australia. So I wanted to start by thanking the university in general and Ian in particular for initiating this unique event for Katharina. It's a rare honour that's given to only those that make the greatest impact to our university, and I feel that in her 48 short years, Kat certainly did that. She was, quite a special person for many of us. I wanted to thank also all the team that put this event on and all those people who have contributed. And I want to do that on behalf of the family in Germany, the family in Australia and around the world. I mean, they may not know how many people are here, but we have 100 odd people in the room and several hundred watching worldwide. And I think that would actually embarrass Katharina a little bit. I mean, she's a very humble person, actually, despite, all that she'd achieved. And I should say that I'd like to thank all the other speakers for taking all the things I wanted to say off my plate, so that I have to ad-lib a little bit. But you've heard a lot about her multi-talentedness, right? And I did want to actually say that she was unbelievably multi-talented. She was a world-class scientist. She was a world-class person. Unless I've told you, you probably don't know she was a world-class sprinter. She was actually in the German national team. She's a European junior champion. She was not your average person. So I thought what I would speak about was really her motivations, what really got behind what she wanted to do and how she did it. And I'm going to embellish my words with some quotes, as some others have done, from the many, many tributes that I've received. And many of these tributes have educated me on how wide her impact in fact was. People say, I met her once and she completely inspired me to change how I was doing my science. But I'm going to use mostly quotes from the EMBL node in single molecule science group leaders, because I think many of them, as Till said, many of them are inspired to come here because of Katharina. And I think it's easy to forget that apart from the family and myself, these were the people, at least at UNSW, that were closest to her, and they're also grieving, and they're also coping with her loss, because she was the person that made them feel safe, made them feel like that they could really make a difference here. And so, I really can't talk about Kat without a profound sense of sadness. Partly because we were super close, exceptionally close. And I'd never want to take credit for anything she did, and she would never want to take credit for anything I did. But we had our fingerprints on everything everybody did, because our togetherness was there. We gave each other unwavering support, and I think that's actually one of the secrets to success, is getting unwavering support from your loved ones. She was super proud of what I achieved, and her favourite joke for many years was, I'm the only senior lecturer with a Scientia professor as chauffeur. And then it became, I'm the only associate professor with a Scientia professor as chauffeur. And then, as you know, it progressed on to, I'm the only Scientia professor that had a Scientia professor as a chauffeur. And so that closeness, I think, was really summed up in one of the tributes I read from the wife of one of my colleagues. She said, you were so close to each other, no Justin without Kat, and no Kat without Justin. Your love for each other was felt so much in everything you did. So I tend to feel like I didn't just lose a wife, I lost part of myself. And Till also said this, one of the things we believe very strongly was that we're incredibly privileged. I think everybody in the room can say the same thing. And with that privilege comes the responsibility to give others the same opportunities or better opportunities than we had. And I don't know anybody that lives that ideal more than Kat. She really was motivated by making the world a better place. And she was never really motivated by personal glory or status. I wouldn't say that didn't mean she didn't have an ego. Well, she did. And she certainly wanted to show that she could play in the big league of science. And she did that with this flurry of Nature and Immunology papers in 2011 and 2012. But what I learnt after that was actually just a stepping stone for what she really wanted to do, which was create opportunity for others. Though I should say she kept publishing in those journals. One of her other favourite jokes was that I'd started a new journal. It was called Nature, Science and Cell. And so that if you published in my journal, you could say you published in Nature, Science and Cell. Well, that science paper was the end of Kat's trifecta. She did publish in Nature, Science and Cell. I currently have 3 journals to go. So she changed her focus once she showed she could dance in the big league when it comes to science, and she developed the BMIF, or really drove the creation of the BMIF, which was all about giving other people the facilities to do great science like she did. I should say, because most of you weren't here then, prior to that, UNSW had one confocal light microscope. We are now the envy of any university in the world. You know, top people from all over the world see what we have, and nobody has what we have. And that's really down to Kat's relentless drive. And then after that, she gave it up because she wasn't interested in empires. She was interested in building new things. She gave it up and she started the Embl node in single molecule science, which was much more about allowing the next generation of outstanding early career researchers, give them that kickstart to become superstars. And as Till said, she knew that was about more than money. To recruit the great people, it was about establishing the right culture. And I think that was the other thing that was really key in Kat, was that culture allowed the collective to support each other, do better work, and revel in each other's success. As Jan Goemben said, and he's one of the group leaders of single molecule science, she talked about culture and how we were the ones making decisions for ourselves. She empowered us. I had absolute blind trust in her, and I knew that whatever happened, she had our backs, unconditionally. And it was that unwavering support that made you feel like you were 10 feet tall when you worked with Kat. But to change the status quo is not an easy thing to do. Especially it's nigh impossible when you try and do it from the coalface of the university rather than in a leadership position. But I even think our executive will tell you changing the university is not an easy thing. But Kat was a really determined person. About the only thing she wasn't world class at was understanding the word no. And she would just push and push and push. She'd use her charisma, her ingenuity, and do whatever she could to enact change. And what drove her there was, we all see our students that have that idealism when they start their PhD, and you look at them and they think they're going to make the world better, and you go, yeah, okay, I won't disillusion you yet. Pragmatism will kick in. Pragmatism never kicked in for Kat. She just fundamentally believed she could make the world better, and she was the one to do it. And so that meant she could do the impossible. As Emma Serecki said, my first impression when I first met Kat was strength, intellect and resolved. It seemed that she could make anything happen out of sheer will. That was true of her science, changing paradigms and creating things that did not exist. What I found most remarkable is she used her magical powers not to her own profit, but to benefit others, changing the institution and ultimately the world. But in Kat's short life, I think she was an inspiration to many, as again, I've had many messages to tell me that. And one of the reasons she was such an inspiration, I think, is because she always was herself. She never played roles that people expected of her. She just was Kat. And just through the force of her argument and her will, she would eventually get you to see what most of us already knew. She did have the right way to go forward. And she was never scared to push us all, me included, to be better regardless of how hard it was. I can't tell you about the number of holidays I went on that I really didn't want to. Traversing a glacier across Alaska for 12 days, when she saw that option, I thought, I have no choice but to go. And she was a champion for everyone. So people like to say she was a champion of women in STEM. She would not have wanted to say that. Clearly she was an inspiration to women in STEM, but that wasn't what she was about. She was a champion for everyone to have a fair go. She was a champion for finding the best in everybody, and she was a champion of allowing others to make a difference. That's really what she was about. So I'm going to leave you with two final sets of words. One from another SMS group leader, Kate Poole. Kat was always brave and bold enough to see the unique ways in which people can be awesome to celebrate. Kat was always brave and bold enough to see the unique ways in which people can be awesome, to celebrate our differences and encourage us to strive to do visionary science together. She will long remain an inspiration to me and many others. Or in my words, I was just so proud of what she achieved in her short life and how she achieved it, and it was an incredible privilege to be part of her life journey for more than half her life. We are better off for her having touched our lives, most of all me. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. That was just a truly brilliant, beautiful tribute to a truly brilliant and beautiful person, someone who was inherently brave, I think, and someone who we can all aspire to be. We are coming to the end of this beautiful memorial service, but before we finish, I'd like to introduce the final speaker, our President and Vice-Chancellor, Professor Ian Jacobs.
Well, hello everyone. A warm welcome to family, friends and colleagues of Kat. My thanks to Emma, Blado, Ludger, Jamie and Till for your wonderful words. And thank you, Justin, not only for your words, but for allowing us to be part of this celebration of Kat's life. This is a sad occasion, but it is very definitely a celebration of an amazing woman. Like Kat, Justin, you are an inspiring example to all of us. Thank you. Today we've heard about Kat in so many ways. As a brilliant researcher, as an inspirational mentor, and as a warm, wonderful human being. Charismatic, innovative, visionary, a champion of women and girls in STEM, a fearless leader, a formidable intellect, a force of nature, and I think probably one of the things she'd have loved to hear most as a scientist's scientist. Kat packed so much into her too few years, and those who were privileged to come into her orbit really did realize just how lucky they were. You only have to read the tributes to Kat from her family, friends and colleagues to understand the void that's been left by her passing, but also the truly extraordinary legacy that's been left by her life. Her research was central to who Kat Gaus was, but people were equally important. She was strongly committed to building her team and supporting its members, and we've heard so much about that. Her dedication to mentoring early career researchers was a particular strength of Kat's, and we're fortunate that she's gifted us a cohort of scientists across the world, as well as at UNSW, who have learnt from the very best. The social aspect of work was something which Kat really did believe was an integral part of relationship building. Some team members were moved to comment on the competitive side of Kat. Did anyone notice that? Oh. It extended beyond the lab to the go-kart track. I hadn't actually realised that it extended to such sprinting excellence. And what was described as a terrifying climbing wall. And from what I read, even book club seemed to take on a sporting flavour with Kat, who insisted on a well-calibrated and rigorous scoring system. But Kat's main competition, I'm sure you all noticed, was with herself. She never asked more of others than she expected of herself. She had what was described as a go-big philosophy that perfectly aligned with her belief in working for a greater cause. And as Justin said, she was motivated by making the world a better place in everything she did. I had the privilege of seeing her energy and passion in meetings that I had with Kat. I always came away from our meetings impressed by her passion for her research and for science generally. Her ability to imbue that excitement in others was a joy to behold. And she was just as refreshingly honest and passionate, whether you were a student, a collaborator, the Dean, or the Vice-Chancellor. Now, Kat and I do have one thing in common. We were both alumni of Cambridge University, and I suspect that she and I just missed each other. She would have started her master's as I finished a fellowship in 1994. And Kat shared values that Cambridge and UNSW and so many of the other universities that she was associated with instill in students and staff. A great respect for the people she worked with, not only within UNSW but at other academic institutions, a desire to make a positive contribution to society, and the ethos of making collaboration central to her mission. And those are attributes that she worked hard to advance in the UNSW environment. And wow, how she achieved it. She did so with great success, perhaps best illustrated by her founding and leadership of the European Molecular Biology Laboratory here at UNSW, and the fact that so many researchers from across the world sought to work with Kat through EMBL is testament to the esteem in which she was held as a scientist and as a person. UNSW is determined to preserve Kat's legacy through the people she trained and the great research endeavours that she set up. And we also want to make sure that the name Kat Gaus becomes interwoven in our university's story. And that's why I am thrilled today to announce that the biomedical imaging facility in the Mark Wainwright Analytical Centre will be renamed. It'll be renamed the Katharina Gaus Light Microscopy Facility. So the name Katharina Gaus now becomes part of UNSW's rich heritage of honouring those who have made an enduring difference to our university and through their work to the larger community in Australia and globally. I want to thank each of you here today and those watching via live stream for helping us pay tribute to the life and work of Scientia Professor Katharina Gaus. To Justin and all Kat's family, friends and colleagues, our thoughts remain with you. And while this ends the formal part of the proceedings, I hope that those who are here will stay for light refreshments and to share more memories of this extraordinary life we've gathered to commemorate and celebrate. You'll also find a memorial book to sign in the foyer and details of how to donate to a fund for a bench dedicated to Kat to be installed within the centennial parklands of which she was so fond. Again, my thanks to all of you for being here. And I'll now ask Justin to lead us out of the hall to end this event. Thank you.
The minuet again? The number 7? Or should we just do number?